All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jackie Fucillo. I'm with the Benefits and Wellbeing team here at Premise, and I'm your host today. We are hosting Robert Allenson. He is our presenter, and he's going to be talking about stress and the human body. I'm so looking forward to this presentation, especially this time of the year. So thank you in advance, Robert. Robert is a licensed clinical professional counselor certified in drug and alcohol counseling, and holds his certification in integrative mental health provider. He received his undergrad degree in education and also a master's degree in community counseling. He has worked with a diverse population within the inpatient hospitalization as well as outpatient substance abuse and mental health settings. His areas of focus have been addictions, anxiety, depression, anger, grief, and life transitions, adjustment related issues, among many more. While taking a very client-centered approach, he utilizes techniques from acceptance commitment therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and motivational interviewing, using these approaches to empower members and their families to take an active role in recovery, employing their own strength and resources, in addition to learning how to modify and adapt them to the ever-evolving seasons of life. And I think there's one thing we can count on is change, right? And adjustments. This is a great bio, Robert. But if I missed anything, please go ahead. Feel free to add anything to your introduction too.
Well, I appreciate the introduction. Yeah, as I said, my name is Robert Allenson. I'm the clinical therapist over in the Elgin location, and Elgin, Illinois. As far as weather goes, it's cold. It's Chicago cold. It sucks. As far as the December webinar, I'd like to welcome you all to it. If you were present for the last month's webinar, I believe the topic was on stress when it specifically relates to holidays. That's definitely very situational, very unique, and not in any way to be minimized. It's a hard one. But as far as today goes, I want to kind of look more at stress from more of a general perspective. And I think a lot of times we tend to look at stress as a situational thing. And we say, well, you know what? Once that report is done, I'll be fine. Once the party's over and I get everything cleaned up, then I can rest. Once, you know what? Once those kids get to age 10, it'll finally be easier. I'm kind of falling victim to that right now. I'm hoping that, but as many of you know, life doesn't tend to work that way. Whenever one stressor ends, we kind of find another one in a way. And today I want to kind of look at how do we deal with life when those stressors are there, and especially with it being the getting closer to the new year, I'm going to present a challenge. I think a lot of times we get very used to setting New Year's resolutions that are focusing on, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to get my butt into shape. I'm going to do all these things. In a way, we kick our butts basically to create these resolutions, and we wonder why they don't fit. I would challenge and see if we can try a different approach to New Year's resolutions. What if a New Year's resolution focused more on self-compassion as opposed to self-dictatorship? And we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that. I'm going to ask you to kind of think about that as we go along in today's session, webinar, whatever we call it, legal stuff. All right, goals of today's session. Today's session, I want to kind of look at the overview of stress. So we're all kind of on the same page as far as terms and verbiage that we're using. And then, of course, noticing at varying levels. I always think of it like, if I can notice it lower, I can address it sooner, and I don't have to deal with the consequences at the higher levels. We want to look at the relationship between stress management and health. That's kind of where we talk about the human body. Why does it matter? Basically, that's kind of what that question. Why is it that we need to work on stress? Because That's just up here. We're going to talk a little bit more why, a little bit more about why what happens here happens all over. And then after we get past the what's going on point, we're going to look at, okay, what can I do? And from that section, we're going to look at just kind of creating an idea of some practical toolbox type items, tools or strategies that you can implement. And it doesn't matter how many you do, to at least get the bucket to be a little bit emptier, just a little bit. Okay. All right. I'm being honest, I love Bill Nye, so consider the following. I'd like you to watch this video and notice what happens with this machine. Now, the picture already shows you kind of, but just kind of notice what happens. It's running normal. Oh, okay, everything's fine. Then something happens. Steam blows up, fire, and basically before we know it, the world's ending in that factory. Now, as we're looking at it, we see these guys panicking. They don't know what's going on. And we're seeing this machine that just exploded. And again, I just see this video. I don't really know why. But I kind of have some theories, and I think many of you might as well. If you work with machines at all, if you have a car, you probably have an idea of how this happened. And the idea that a lot of us the first thing that none of us would say is that machine wasn't working hard enough. Because I think logic dictates that machine was working too hard and it exploded. Maybe it was pushing past something and the workers didn't notice that a gear was fraying or whatever. But again, I kind of reiterate, it's definitely everybody would agree that the reason that this happened is not because it was not working hard enough. That's a lot of double negatives, but while that tends to be a very easy thing to notice when it comes to machinery, computers, cars, whatever it is, what happens when we look at ourselves? Our body is a machine. And yet, when it breaks down, a lot of times, many of us start to say, oh, it's harder. I'm just not trying hard enough. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to have you kind of consider that idea of how we would approach a machine versus how we approach our own body. So, what is stress in its basic form? We initially think of stress and we think of it as like, it's this terrible thing. Not really. Stress it's just the same as breathing. It is the same as our heart doing what it needs to do. Stress is a universal biological response. If something changes in our environment, our body is going to have to figure out how to adapt. Sometimes the change is so abrupt that it needs to adapt a lot quicker. If that tiger is right behind me and I don't notice it, and then I see it, I don't really have time to say, oh, that's a tiger. And he's got really sharp teeth. And, I'm pretty sure that what I need to do right now is get my leg up and maybe put it down again and run. But in order to do that, I probably should tighten up my muscles. Okay, let me get loose. Let me get my muscles going. Got to warm up first. Before I do that, I'm dead. So what our body has done is our body has found a shortcut. Our body has found a way to get us to react in an adaptive way. And that's where we look at the idea that stress is really a biological experience that is triggered by a very, very ancient response. When we sense something, certain systems go online so that we survive. And of course, it varies based off the intensity, but that's really at the end of the day what's happening. So if we kind of look at it here, this is a little bit of the, under the hood. When we're experiencing a stressor, so that the tiger is right behind me, and we notice it. So like maybe I smell, I notice it through one of my senses. And I'm like, oh, I can hear the rustling. Now, whether it's a tiger or not, my brain automatically is going to go to, we could be in danger, so let's turn some things on. Let's turn on the the fight or flight system. And that's a very important system for these reasons. Our dilates will expand, saliva is inhibited. Like all these different biological changes happen in our body. But if we look at them, and at first we think of it as just like, well, that's just what you do. When you're anxious, you breathe a lot. When you're anxious, your heart rate speeds up. You tense up. That's just what happens. But I like to think of the question of why. Well, if my heart rate speeds up, that means I don't have to really do that warming up I was just trying to do. It's already done it for me. If my breathing intensifies, okay, I'm a little warmed up, I'm ready to jump. Muscles are tense already, so they're ready to get out of there. And basically we're ready to go to fight or run away. On the other side, we also say it takes work to do all those things. So we're also taking some energy from other systems in our body that aren't really needed. Thus, that gastrointestinal system, the stomach and all that kind of stuff, our body says like, I don't really need to digest that burger very much. It's not really as important as not getting killed. So let's turn that off. Let's shut that down. Because let's survive now. We'll digest the burger later. And then when the stressor goes away, our body's able to go back into rest and digest. And everything just kind of slows back down. Things turn back online. Think of it in terms of the Starship Enterprise going from battle mode when the Klingons show up back into normal functioning when the threat has subsided. And again, this is just how it's supposed to work, how the body is supposed to design art. And this is the way it's worked for many years. And not only do we do that, our pets, any being on this planet responds in this way. Now, naturally, I'm selling you on how helpful of a cool tool this is. I mean, again, it's like a spidey sense. It's pretty cool. But what happens when it becomes problematic? So the problematic side of it comes in when the stressor is more than the body can take, more than we can overwhelm, when maybe it's not solvable, when it lasts longer than it really should. And to be honest with you, that sounds like 2024. So we have stressors in today that are intense. Each of us has stressors that last for a long time and just go. Maybe they're not the same as a tiger attacking us, but they are there and they build up. So even though now when we could have an extreme stressor that overwhelms the system and it just causes damage right away. Thing is though, even having a buildup of stressors in our life, having that bucket slowly filling up, what it does is it takes us along the stress curve and it takes us up. We're still doing good. Okay, I'm good. Okay, now I'm getting some work done. I can feel some tension. And maybe even here, this is actually might be a good time in the yellow category because might be when we are growing. We're learning new things. We're being accomplished. We're feeling great. So actually, in a way, this is considered optimum stress, where we kind of want some stress in our life. But the problem is there's a point, especially in our society, where if some is good, well, then a lot must be better. So we tend to take it a little bit more into the danger zone and down and down and down. And then before we know it, the machine has, exploded. So these are some of the potential factors right now that can contribute to that in our society today. We think of it as we're always available. Our phones, we can always see what's going on in the world. We can always, we feel like we always have to be on stage sometimes. Societal pressures, so sometimes we could be in a family or in a culture that really says, well, again, if a little's good, a lot more is better. So if you're not If you're not working 24/7, what are you doing? You know, why are you resting? What does that mean? You know, I mean, I can't tell you. And that can happen, you know, even when we may even feel like we just can't. And societal, economical, political uncertainties. I mean, again, just these are just the worries of our days today. We don't know what's going on, so that can bring it in. And then of course, health advances is great. It also gives a lot of information, a lot of stuff to worry about. I got to make sure I do this so I don't do that. Got to make sure I don't do this, but do that. So it's again, and all of these things can have varying levels of intensity as far as stressors, but at the end of the day, they build up. And unfortunately, a consequence of that, when they build up and they're never managed well, they start to affect the body. Because I mean, if you think about it, if the fight or flight system is always running, well, that machine was always running too. And we saw it happen. You know, what we start to see is as far as, you know, muscles, fatigue, tension, pain, all those things start to wear because there's wear and tear on the body. Worsening of pre-existing lung conditions, when we're breathing heavy and we're just keep going. It can definitely put wear and tear. Same with the heart. We see increased blood pressure, heart disease, those kind of things as well, because again, and all this comes back down to the wear and tear. And unfortunately, when it comes to the stomach and the gastrointestinal system, that's why, you know, IBS, I would figure is why it's becoming more common, because we are going. And that means that the stomach has to like turn off, then turn on real quick, then turn off, then turn on. So it's getting confused. It's not able to absorb the nutrients appropriately. So it's like, what are we doing? And then, of course, you know, it just starts getting madness. Reproductive health, you know, of course, if we're always going, the body's going to shut down the system for reproduction, or it's going to make it harder for those things to work. Our drive is not going to be there because I'm just always going. And then psychological, naturally, irritability, problems concentrating, anxiety, depression, insomnia. I mean, that we could say that kind of goes without saying, but I think a lot of times we focus so much on like, well, that just causes this. I can get over that. I just need to work harder. A lot of times we say that. But the problem is the more harder we work, we tend to make it more. Now, with all that being said, and there's your doom and gloom for the day. That was basically my way of selling the importance of managing our stress. Now, the first thing everybody's probably thinking is, okay, great. My doctor says that all the time. Don't get so stressed. Yeah, I remember when my wife was pregnant, the first thing the doctor said was, okay, just try not to stress out. And we both looked at him and we said, she's a high school teacher and teaches AP for freshmen. How? Because I mean, again, like while everybody knows that managing our stress is a good thing, a lot of times we don't really know how. And unfortunately, a lot of times the very brain that stresses out kind of fights against those strategies. So it's very much a battle. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about, and actually this is me something that I'm going to go through throughout this. I mean, you're going to get annoyed with this, but awareness, recognizing the signs. So what I'm going to ask is, if you can, just kind of go into the chat, and if you could just type in some of your telltale signs of stress. How do you know when things are starting to creep up? Things are starting to get a little bit too much. And give me a moment to kind of talk through some of those, or to think through some of those. But can't sleep. Yep. A lot of times, like if I'm always going, well, it's hard to go to sleep because the brain is still going. The brain doesn't know when to stop because we don't know. We have never told it how to do that. Headaches. Yep. Definitely. I mean, like we got that tension. If we're always running. Heart racing, can't shut off my brain, headaches, tense shoulders, starting to get irritable, muddy thinking. Yeah, like that confusion. We've got so much going on in our head that we're just trying to say, well, then, and actually that muddy thinking one, I want to touch with that one a little bit, because unfortunately, a lot of times when we get that confusion, that muddy thinking, we can start to feel guilty. And these are just some examples of signs. But I want to kind of look at that professional helplessness or feeling guilty area. You know, when the machine exploded and it didn't, or shoot, let's say the machine never exploded. Let's just say it wasn't producing the product as well. Maybe it was missing some parts or whatever. Now, it's very easy. I think again, a lot of us would be like, oh, well, maybe something's wrong with the system. Maybe it got off kilter or whatever. Maybe it just needs to reset itself. But for ourselves, when we start to notice ourselves faltering or becoming confused, there is a voice in our head that tends to say, what's wrong with you? Are you even able to do this anymore? I mean, as a therapist, I've definitely seen that happen where I might be just like not with it a couple sessions and I'm wondering like, what's going on? Why am I not there? And I start to, and that I've actually gotten to the point where that will be a time when I start to download. In the past, I would start to download all the different podcasts on like specific topics. I'm like, oh, well, I wasn't able to do that because I don't understand that enough. That's what the problem is. I don't understand it enough, so I'm going to learn more. I need to do this more. And I even joke with some of my members. I joke with them and saying that a lot of the books on my shelf are responses to shame and feeling like I'm not good enough. And ultimately, though, it actually comes down to I've been putting too much on my plate. Maybe it's and like if I look back to those situations, maybe there's stuff going on at home. It was a full day of every single person was in crisis mode. And I was just getting overwhelmed and my body wasn't able to keep up. So that can even be a subtle sign. We even see like pessimism, negativity. And we start to say like, oh, can you imagine this just sucks. Everything just sucks. While that might be true, it also might be a sign that we're burning out, or that we're getting a little bit more stressed. So these are like some of those potentially hidden or mistaken signs of stress, the ones we tend to write off. We tend to get mad at ourselves. Well, I'm not exhausted. What are you talking about? I'm just lazy. Stop being lazy. Just keep working. So we work hard. And of course, then we feel more tired. So what we're going to do right now is after we kind of start looking at recognizing the signs, we're going to do an exercise right now that may help with that. And this is called the body scan. So I'm going to ask everybody if you're willing to do it, if you're in a safe place to do so, you can just make sure that you're kind of take a moment to be in a comfortable position in your chair. And if you're not, and if you just noticed that you had to move, my question for you is why were you not in a comfortable position in the first place? But that goes without saying. So just kind of for a moment, just take a moment to notice where you're sitting, resting your arms on your legs or on the armrests, and bring your attention to your breathing. Just notice what happens to your body once you pay attention to that and once I shut up. Then bring your attention to the top of your head. So if your full focus is there. Noticing the hair resting on your head. Traveling down to your forehead. Noticing those muscles. Your forehead, your eyebrows. Noticing your face and your jaw. Just kind of silently describing how they feel in your mind. They tense, they relaxed, have they changed? Notice your neck, your shoulders. Silently describe the sensations that may be there. Your arms. Your hands. Noticing your upper back. Shifting that focus and noticing what you sense there. And your lower back. Chest. And your stomach. Notice your seat as it's sitting in the chair. Your legs. And your feet as they're set into the ground. And then slowly traveling up back to your legs. Notice your butt, your stomach, your whole back. Noticing your arms and your shoulders. Come back to your neck and your head. And as if you were a helicopter, just kind of zooming out and taking consideration of your whole body. Taking note of any changes that may have come after this exercise or not. Taking one final deep breath as you open your eyes. All right. So with that body scan exercise, I'm going to ask that you, again, we're going to use the chat. If you could kind of give a kind of a response. What are some things that you noticed during the exercise? This is an exercise that I think not many of us really think of doing on a regular basis. I think a lot of us we just go through our day just doing. And then we wonder when we get home from work, hey, why is my shoulder, broken, basically? When if we look back on the day, we may have not even realized that I've been like this the entire time. There will be times also, for myself, I could go 5 minutes and then look around and be like, why am I dizzy? Oh, I haven't breathed for 5 minutes. Now I realize it just because I've been so focused. And that's the thing, like with this body scan, it gives us a chance to just check in, just notice what am I actually feeling. So yeah, if you could just kind of in the chat, just type out some things that you noticed from this exercise, things that maybe you didn't notice before. I am tense. Well, it is Thursday morning. So being tense right now makes sense. Tense muscles that I was not aware of. Yeah. And I'll be interested to see how many people say that same thing. Because a lot of us, we are at a point in our day where we're just in work mode. We got the adrenaline of the start of the day going, and we don't think to check in. But I challenge doing a body scan maybe like twice a day. Maybe it's like mid-morning and mid-afternoon. Just as a way to say, like, okay, where am I at? And that in of itself, again, can help us to make a decision. Now, can I say it's comfortable? For some people, it might not be. Like you just mentioned that there's some stress that we notice. Yeah, that's not fun to have. So instead of saying this is an exercise to relax me, this is more of an exercise to help notice what I need. Like if I notice during this exercise that I'm like this, well, maybe that's a good sign for me to loosen. So that's the body scan. And this next slide talks about what I call anchor tools. And basically, these are the things that I present to you as options. Now, any strategy, any tool, anything we talk about today is just an idea. It is not that you have to do every single one of these things because, again, that's going to be more stressful. And it's not saying that all of these are going to be what works. I challenge you to try them, try what works, keep doing what works, leave the rest, you know? And so with that, the first part of the toolbox I look at is anchor tools, meaning these are the things that I encourage you to just, keep doing. The things that we want to kind of make sure that we have through every single day almost. So, as I said, I'm going to annoy you, mindful check-ins, becoming aware, noticing yourself, doing something like a body scan, taking a pause, saying, how am I doing right now? Taking care of our sleep. Might go without saying, but a lot of us tend to disregard it, especially when we're stressed. If we're not prioritizing our sleep, we don't have the energy to deal with the rest of the day. Treating illnesses, you heard me cough. So I am doing this, but can I say that I'm perfect with it as well? No. We need to make sure that we're being mindful of illnesses and being mindful that we are bringing our full self to the place. And if there's things that are getting in the way, it's not just I have to work harder. Maybe it's I need to take care of that. Doing one thing daily that's fun and meaningful. Now, this is something I'm going to really put as a challenge for a lot of you to look at your schedule, your daily schedule, and notice how many things you do have scheduled that are kind of fun. Chances are it's at least 99%. Got to go to the doctor, got to do that meeting, got to do this thing, that other thing, whatever. What if I were to challenge you to schedule at least one thing each day that you have to do that's meaningful? As an example, if drawing is a passion of yours, what if you were to schedule that in your day? We're very good about scheduling the things that we don't want to do and the things that are life sucking, we could say. My challenge would be to schedule the things that actually could recharge you, that could help to, turn off the fight or flight and actually turn on the rest and digest so that the body can heal. Incorporating quality movement, another word for exercise, making sure that we're, again, taking care of our body, and whether that be stretching, yoga, those things. It does not just have to be lifting more weights and doing more stress. And then utilizing support or counseling, that's where I get to say how awesome I am. Having somebody else where you can bounce ideas off of so that this thing isn't just ping-ponging the same thought back and forth can be a game changer for a lot of us. When we can actually hear our own thoughts is actually to somebody else and get feedback, we may realize, oh, that may not be realistic. So I always encourage, support, counseling that we can trust. All right, next exercise. This is called the 4-7-8 breath. And I'm not going to give too much of an intro to it, but I'll give you a little bit of a guide. When we do this exercise, when you breathe in, when I ask you to inhale, you're going to make sure you're breathing in from your stomach. And there's a reason for that, what we'll kind of discuss at the end. It might be a unique way of breathing for you. You might not be used to it, but I would encourage you to kind of just to notice it. Notice what happens. Okay, so what we're going to do in this exercise is we're going to breathe in, count to 4. We're going to hold for the count of 7 and exhale for the count of 8. There's a specific reason why I have those numbers, which we'll get to at the end. So, again, just same as we just did, make sure you're comfortable. And again, if you had to move just now because you weren't comfortable, why did you get into an uncomfortable position? Makes no sense. Anyway, just kind of start by taking a breath and noticing your breathing. No direction right now, just kind of at least kind of catching it almost. Like a lot of times we don't notice our breathing and we need to get control of it again. When we're ready, when I start counting, we're going to start inhaling. So I'm going to start inhaling 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just before we open our eyes, just gotta take a moment to notice your surroundings. You have to take one more deep inhale, just kind of if you can. Slowly open your eyes. Okay. As we just did, I'm gonna ask that you guys kind of jump back into the chat and give me some feedback. What are some things that everybody noticed? Again, this exercise is a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more directive than the last one, a little more specific. And some people, when they say they did this, relaxing on the exhale. Yeah, some people definitely say that. They'll say it was relaxing on the exhale. More relaxed, more calm. Yeah. There are a lot of people who may say that. Now, funny thing is, some people may say, oh my God, that sucked. You know, they may say that was not comfortable. And sometimes that can be because we're so used to going that our body kind of fights it. Also, the numbers 4, 7, 8. You know, the reason that we're getting that calm, if we go back to the rest and digest system versus, or the rest and digest mode versus fight or flight. Rest and digest is slowing the heart rate down. Is the heart rate slows down, the breathing slows. So when we breathe in for the count of 4, it only gives us so much oxygen. When you have to hold that for the count of 7 and then exhale for the count of 8, your heart's like, where's that oxygenated blood? So, well, we better preserve it. So it slows down naturally. It's kind of like our instead of saying I need to think better in order to calm down, it's our way of hacking the system and actually going in and slowing the system down itself. And that's kind of why an exercise like this is important, why it's important to think of it as like exhaling for longer than you inhale. So really, if 4, 7, 8 is maybe a weird, too difficult, you can always adjust it, but just always making sure that you are exhaling and holding for a longer duration than you inhale. And again, the reason I talk about the stomach as opposed to the chest breathing, because if you think about it, if we breathe from our chest, that's anxious breathing. You know, that is what we do when we're in fight or flight. When we breathe from our stomach, a lot of us are not used to it, but that is relaxed breathing. That is the body slowing itself down. So it's a very different response. So that's an example of what I call a fire extinguisher tool. Basically, how do I make it through the moment and still be effective? It's not necessarily how do I feel better. I think a lot of times the myth is in order to manage my stress, I have to feel better all the time. Maybe not. I like to think of it as like, how can I be effective? And so the first tool I'm going to say, mindfully checking in. I can't do anything until I know what's going on. And if I wait until the machine exploded, it's too late. And sometimes for ourselves, when we are snapping at other people, that's the machine exploding. When we are exhausted and just can't move, that's the machine exploding. So I think of notice the signs sooner. That's why, you know, the body scan can be helpful in that. Doing one thing at a time. You know, when our brain is screaming, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing that. This is where it could actually be even more stressful, where we have to actually challenge ourselves to say, you know what? This hurts. I don't like it. Every voice in my head is saying, don't do this. And yet I'm gonna stop and do one thing. what is that one thing? You can view that by making a list. I even had a client today who mentioned to me that she's using before the workday or during the workday, she'll set a list, make a list basically during a time when she's not very stressed. She'll make a list of things that she knows she wants to accomplish, because she knows that when she gets home at 6, the stress brain, the anxious brain, is going to say, you need to do this. It's hard to prioritize them. So doing one thing at a time and prioritizing, it's better to have a plan than it is just react. Taking a break and distracting. If we're overwhelmed, take a moment, as much as our brain says not to. These breathing exercises we just went through, relaxation techniques. YouTube is a great resource. There's definitely those apps that are available for it. And those are definitely can be good options as long as we're doing them consciously. That's going to be the key when it comes to these tools. If we're just doing them in the background, it's just like, oh, whatever. It's not really going to do as much as if we actually say, okay, I'm taking a moment to do this breathing exercise. I'm taking a moment to do this guided meditation. And then speaking up and setting limits, you know what? Not everybody knows that nobody knows what we're feeling inside of us unless we tell them. So we got to actually tell them where our limits are. Now, this is where we look at the idea of resolutions. When we're making these goals, making these resolutions, I always encourage, to prevent those from becoming the next stressor to our list. Let's really get realistic about it. If I truly do want think of what we truly do want. What is most important to me? And not necessarily what does Instagram tell me I need to do. So, and when it looks at focusing on how we are progressing, well, look at accomplishment, not just attainment. I've gotten to this stage. I'm able to do this next thing. If we just say I need to get to this number, what then? Or what happens when that number gets farther and farther away and it's not as easy to get to? We start to get more stressed. So instead we say, all right, again, that's the whole idea of enjoying the journey in a way. And then of course, setbacks, roadblocks, check in with yourself. Maybe my resolution was not as realistic. Maybe not. Now, as far as my challenge goes, I challenge, instead of the stereotypical resolutions, I challenge you to look at something that's important to your life, something that you truly want to do more of, truly want. And I'll kind of give some examples, like for one example could be, I mentioned drawing earlier. If you truly want and enjoy and value art, okay, what is something that you can do to help with that? Now, the cool thing with that is that's a natural relaxation. That can be a tool. We can also think of it as like challenging yourself to take some of these breaks, to do these mindfulness check-ins, and maybe challenge yourself and then do it almost like as an experiment. Okay, for the month of January, I'm going to check in at 10 a.m. and then I'm going to check in again at 2 p.m. doing the body scan, and just set that as the goal. Now, the cool thing about it is, if you're not perfect, you can always make an adjustment. But I would say that's my challenge for a lot of you. So we'll see how it goes. Now, just to help people get some more ideas, what are some of your tools? I think I've kind of anecdotally mentioned a number of tools already, but in the chat, if you could kind of put in some of your go-to tools. What are the things that you have found to actually be effective, things that have been helping you to balance a lot of the stress in your life? And some of these may be unique. They don't have to be breathing. Playing music is one of them. Yeah. Whether it be playing music, listening to music, different types of music even. Pickleball, yeah. At gratitude journal. Yeah. Doing some of those things to actually take a moment and a pause to say, okay, all these stressors in my life, these are the good things. Forgot about that. Getting outside, meditation, walking, connecting with friends and animals, Walking outside, yeah. Notice how I speak to myself intentionally, and don't be negative. I like that one. That's definitely one that can be tricky. And again, that kind of goes back to the awareness piece, noticing when we're beating ourselves up. When is that critic starting to talk? And that critic, a lot of times, can be a sign of stress. It's not that the critic is, so that would mean that if I listen to the critic, he's just going to get stronger. So how do I take care of myself? Practice some of that self-compassion. Another kind of example, like we can also think of it as with some of these tools, they definitely might be different based off the person, based off the situation. So as an example, I mentioned my wife is a high school teacher, and for her driving home from work, she needs to have silence. She will turn everything off. She will just have complete silence in the car. And I've come to learn that calling her between 3 and 3:30 is not the best idea. Mainly because she needs that silence because she's been overstimulated the entire day. Too much. So just having that silence gives her that peace and gives her that chance to reset. For me, where I work, it's a little bit quieter. It's not sensory overload in a way. Sometimes it could be sensory underload. So my drive home from work, I kind of do utilize a phone call. I do utilize, maybe it's a podcast or music, something to kind of get myself, okay, I'm back, so I'm not just like dragging, and that's something that I need. So sometimes like the strategies that we use don't always have to be bring you down and relaxing. They can be ramping you up as well. Okay. All right. And I'm seeing, try to stop worrying about things that may not happen. Yeah, that can be a tricky thing to do. I challenge with that one. Instead of trying to stop worrying about it, simply noticing that your brain is doing it, and maybe even writing down what that thing is. And again, because unfortunately, a lot of times, the more we argue with a thought, the more it starts to argue back. So if we try to stop doing it, it's going to argue back. I would simply experiment with just writing down, my brain is worrying about this thing. Let's see what happens. Just kind of take that step out. So, all righty. So I think that's the last slide. I guess I appreciate everybody for their time. Are there any questions? I know we have a couple minutes left here, but I'd be happy to take some questions. I didn't make a slide for that, unfortunately. So you're gonna have to deal with the tools slide. But any questions that everybody has at this time about just kind of navigating stress, how to put some of these strategies into action, or the such.